Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture, the show where we discuss science, technology and culture, either individually or where they happen to intersect. And I think this week they're going to intersect quite well, I think. Yeah. My name's Ben Warner and I'm joined by my good friend and co-host Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? Ready to talk about space exploration and black holes today?
Absolutely. Hello, Ben. Hello, everyone out there. It just seems to be a big week. Everything's happening at once, and It's all affecting us.
Absolutely. We're going to get straight into it. We'll dispense with any hyperbole because we've got a lot to cover. Now, we're going to start this conversation with the new Christopher Nolan film Interstellar, which hopefully a lot of you have gotten to see. Before we start, we won't say nitpick the science, but what I just wanted to say that I think it's actually an important film just from the fact that when you think about Hollywood films today, you don't really get a lot that actually attempt to put very serious ideas, regardless of whether they're science fiction or not, into a film of that size. So even if the film, when we'll get into a bit more detail, doesn't quite, it stretches the friendship in terms of credibility in places. It does introduce a lot of ideas in terms of space travel. Relativity is probably a good, the way they, display the differences in, time, the way it traverses depending on where astronauts have gone and how much time's elapsed on Earth, that sort of thing, introducing these concepts. And to a mainstream audience, I think that's important.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Ben, I have one question to ask, and I've not seen the film, but we were talking about it a bit before. In comparison, is it a closer movie to Gravity or, say, something like Contact? Or aspects of both?
I'd say aspects of both. The thing that probably differentiates Interstellar from Gravity and Contact's actually another good example too, is that Gravity and Contact had very well structured, plots in the sense that, and the drama, the emotion, the thrills of it were so strong that any sort of potential sort of inaccuracies in the science you didn't notice them as much, unless, of course, that was your field and you kind of know it straight away. The problem, I think, with Interstellar is that it doesn't quite hit on that emotional level. So when certain things occur in the film, you kind of... I'll spoiler alert here. It's largely in the last act. There's a bit where basically Matthew McConaughey has to, sort of sacrifices himself so Anne Hathaway's character can get away. They're basically trying to do a slingshot around a black hole to get home. And there's one part where he sort of jettisons himself from the craft and he disappears into the black hole. Now, I knew straight away, not being a scientist myself, that probably wasn't possible, at least in the sense that if he went in there, he wasn't coming out. And of course, being a Hollywood film, he does come out. So they get around that with things like, we don't know what happens when you go into a black hole, speculation, blah, blah, blah. But, the sense of that, what's the suspend disbelief?
Yes.
It didn't work.
No, they spaghettified your disbelief, which is what happens when you fall into a...
Well, that's one of those article references that we've got here. Neil deGrasse Tyson was busy tweeting about Interstellar, and he mentioned, about the black hole situation in Interstellar, and he basically said, personally, I'd be staying the hell away from black holes as much as I could. So just getting back to the main point, though, films like Gravity and Contact were so well made in the sense that they sort of drifted, or they took your attention away from those sorts of things, whereas Interstellar is still a well-made film and is worthy of being watched, and it's probably worthy of having in the library just from its conceptual standpoint. But because it doesn't fire on all those cylinders, you do notice those things. And the interesting thing is I was in a cinema and where there was actually a lot of probably younger people there, probably in their late teens, early 20s. and I actually overheard them making similar comments.
Wow.
And the strangest thing, the guy that was sitting next to me might have been 21 or 22. He actually was all over 2001. He knew it inside out, and he was already making notes and comparing it to what he saw in Interstellar.
That's interesting, but I think it's there's a lot of good science fiction out there, and I think young people today really are getting into it, rediscovering it, and probably finding some of the Hollywood weaknesses.
I guess the first 2/3 of the film I think hold up. It's just that last act that obviously the director decided to go away from his from Kip Thorne's advice and decided to be a bit more, take a bit more dramatic license, which fair enough. Yeah, I mean it is a film, so it's not real. It's not a documentary. But yeah, it's I still think it's a very interesting film. I think it's also a good place to talk about, or to start talking about, space exploration and the issues with things like that. One of the ideas postulated in the film is, could humans colonize a planet on the rim of a black hole? Now, the reason why I'm asking that, there's an article that we've got here. Where are we? From filmschoolrejects.com. Now, that's actually in Interstellar. When they come out the other side of the wormhole, there's a huge black hole, and there was a planet there that's actually orbiting the black hole.
Of course.
So and this is one of the things that seemed a little odd to me. They go down there, and it's got water, and there's a lot of light, and it seems like it's a normal planet, but the only thing is the black hole's generating tidal waves the size of Mount Everest, which they can't obviously deal with, and gets them into trouble in a couple of points. I don't know. What do you think about that, Steve? Is that the part of the fiction of Interstellar?
This is an interesting thing. I mean, gravity, as we know it, throughout the universe appears to be universal in its effects. So you could well imagine, I mean, there are moons that circle Saturn and Jupiter that have all sorts of crazy effects because of the gravitational pull of the much larger object. Yeah. A black hole would have exactly the same possible effects and probably generate tidal waves the size of Mount Everest, whatever. But I think this is where the liberty has just been taken. Firstly, black holes have gravitational pulls so strong that nothing can escape them. So,
it would get sucked in, basically.
You would get sucked in, and then also light would be distorted in that area as well because of the black hole. And I don't know enough about this, but maybe it would attract light from the rest of the galaxy or something to shine on this planet. I haven't seen the film, so I don't know. But I think this is just where you just write a script of fantasy. And I think, unfortunately, very often for Hollywood, and I think from a writer's perspective, it's just easier to make stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was interesting in that section of the film was that they played with relativity again. Essentially, what happened was that when they went down on the planet, if they spent an hour down on the planet back at the spaceship, 7 years would pass. Yeah. So that seemed like it was stretching things a little bit, but maybe it was
that means the planet would have had to be traveling at the speed of light.
But I guess at the very least, perhaps the fact that they just suggested the idea of how it works may have been enough, even if it wasn't quite correct.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's relative to where the spaceship would be. I'm not going to even get into the physics, but if you circle around something supermassive like a black hole, so if you actually orbit around one at very close to the speed of light, then obviously time slows down on something relative to another object. But you would have thought that the spacecraft would be in the same orbit as this new planet. So relative to each other, time should be equal. Yeah. But I haven't seen the film, so maybe best I don't go there.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's interesting at any rate. I guess just to sort of finish up with Interstellar, because we've got a couple of other topics to cover. again, I just want to reiterate the point that I guess it is a sort of a noble effort.
That's good.
I mean, it's not totally silly. It's just obviously they have to take liberties at some point, and that's when how they suspend your disbelief is how, if they do that for you, then obviously the film will work better. If they don't, you'll probably have problems with it. And I'm sort of in the middle. I thought it was well done, and I appreciated the ideas, but I just didn't think it quite brought it all together. So, but if nothing else, the interesting thing was that when Matthew McConaughey left his daughter at the beginning of the film, she was only, 10 or something like that. When he comes back, she's like 95 or something, and
he's only been gone for 5 minutes.
Yeah, and he's still sort of the same age kind of thing, like maybe a year older or something. That was actually a fairly important concept to get across, if nothing else.
That is one of the big things to get across, and that's why when we finally do go out and explore the stars, we ain't coming back. Not Jenny.
And actually, and that's actually one additional last point I wanted to add. We may have even discussed this before. There's one line that Michael Caine has in the film is that we weren't destined to die here. We were destined to leave this planet.
Yeah, so true.
And I think that's probably true. We may not see it, depending on how it goes. Who knows? Technology is advancing at a rapid pace, but at some stage we will in the future.
That's right.
All right, we'll keep going. Now, of course, we've now landed a probe on a comet. Now, this was amazing. The Philae comet, Philae probe, I should say. A little bit like, isn't it a bit like firing a gun at a moving target that's I don't know how far away, and it's probably only like it's like a needle in a haystack type thing. And
yeah, I think Alan Duffy from Swinburne this week described it as throwing a dart at a dartboard from Perth to Sydney with a blindfold on.
And scoring the bullseye.
Scoring bullseye, yeah.
I mean, it just boggles the mind. It was 10 years ago, wasn't it, that they launched this thing? So the amount of calculations to get it all correct, that's just astounding, really.
If you want to see an amazing infographic, it takes about 3 minutes to view. It's the 10-year journey of Rosetta and Philae from Earth to rendezvous with this comet. And you actually see over the 10 years, it comes back and slingshots off around the Earth orbit twice and uses Mars as well. And to throw it right out into deep space where it's now met the comet, and it's very exciting. It's done so well. There are a few issues at the moment that they're working through. They don't quite know where it's landed because it bounced.
Right.
Because the gravity is really, really low on that comet. So the harpoon didn't fire, didn't lock it to the comet. It bounced. It's probably, they reckon, about 1 kilometre away from where they thought it was going to land.
Right.
It's not getting all the sunlight that they expected it to, but it's still returning data, and we'll wait and see. I mean, what they're going to find inside that comet is probably going to blow our mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of blowing our minds, we'll move on to Brian Cox's claim that was, I thought, a little misrepresented in the media, and I think he actually had to come out and re-clarify what he meant. Obviously, he made headlines with basically saying we are alone. But but how he meant that was interpreted in different ways, I think. Do you want to take us through that, Steve?
Well, I've actually seen him give the full answer to this. So his basic premise is that the chances of us being here as humans are exceptional, or, sentient beings, intelligent life forms, able to go into space is exceptionally unlikely.
Yeah.
But there are two schools of thought. Either it's really unlikely and we're the only ones like this in the universe, and he's not listing probability, or the other thing is that the laws of the universe means that we are likely, just not very likely.
Right.
So if you have organic life, it probably can evolve into intelligent beings. He then extends that by saying, and we've spoken about the Drake equation here, which is the likelihood of people on Earth ever encountering intelligent life somewhere else. And that could be through the SETI program and us detecting radio waves from a distant galaxy. And the distances are so great, and even for light to travel that far, the time so long that it's unlikely that our civilization will ever meet another civilization.
Yeah. So that's a little bit different than just a blanket statement saying we're alone.
That's right, because his other point in this is there might be a lot of life, and he said if you actually look at human evolution on this planet, or even the evolution of mammals, or even of dinosaurs, you know, you've got basically 3.5 billion years where there was nothing. Then you've had an explosion, and then it's only a small proportion. It's taken 4.5 billion years of Earth being, 3.5 billion years of Earth being a stable environment for intelligent life like humans to get where we are.
Yeah.
So the chances of a planet having a stable environment like Earth's for that long is extremely unlikely. And even though there are billions and billions and billions of stars out there, and literally probably billions of planets like Earth, the chance of life evolving there might be the same as it was here. There might be humanoid objects there with intelligence like ours, but the chance of the two groups meeting are very, very small. And that's his point about us being alone.
But I guess the other, maybe the one point of hope, maybe if you think about it, is just perhaps we don't have a full understanding yet of the possibilities of space travel and what we could do in the future. You know, a lot of you know, probably on today's technologies, it's probably impossible. Who knows what we may be able to discover in the future that may be able to simplify a search like that. But still, it's not something, obviously, that's going to happen overnight unless someone out there deliberately comes looking for us or something like that. And if at any rate, they'd probably be a lot more advanced if they were able to make it here.
Yeah, but by the same token, and just harking back to Interstellar, my guess is that one day humans will meet intelligent life, but it won't be here on Earth. I think we'll meet somewhere in the middle, in the depths of space.
Yeah, absolutely.
A bit like Star Trek.
Actually, well, if yeah, that'll be interesting. As long as they don't have funny foreheads.
Yeah. Exactly. Speak a funny language.
Yeah, that's right. Now we'll move on to our final bits and pieces of space travel and exploration topics here. And it's interesting, you know, the space travel started, I guess, as a government-sponsored enterprise in the 20th century, but there seems to be a very big shift going on at the moment with, obviously, a lot of funding getting cut at the government level, and it seems to be shifting now towards corporate type sponsorship. There was a story in The Guardian. Google leases NASA airbase for robots, planes, and space exploration. It signed a 60-year, $1.16 billion lease to renovate 3 large hangars at a NASA airfield outside of San Francisco, including the historic Hangar 1. I'm curious about this, if corporate entities pick up the slack for space travel, what that means going forward. Does that mean potentially they're going to own this space? Are they going to clamour with each other? Is this like the ultimate sort of market to try and tap into?
I think so. I think that's why Google is doing it. Those guys at Google, I mean, what can they buy on Earth? They got I mean, they've got the GDP of a country.
Yes. Yeah.
They've got the means. They could buy stuff on Earth that obviously has no meaning. It only has material value. So the obvious thing to do would be to be the first into space. And I think that Google, if you look at all their plans, and we're talking about probably their Project Loon and likewise in a bit, that's their expansion program. They see the future of humanity in space, and as you've just said, that's where we're all headed, and I agree with that too. And I think that anyone who would dare look to the future of humanity would have to say that there's going to be a lot of humans living and working in space in the next century.
Could there be a potential conflict then with, say, with government if they want, a say in how it all goes down?
Next thing, we've got Star Wars.
Yeah.
Fight the Federation, fight the Republic. I don't know. I would imagine that space itself would be treated like international waters. So there'll probably be some sort of Earth law on what we should do with, Earth orbits. And I imagine the moon would probably be covered by a territorial agreement, not unlike Antarctica.
Yeah.
So I imagine that's what would happen. That's what any right-minded thinking would happen. But I can tell you now, I bet you asteroids and comets are going to be open season. If you want to go out there in your ship, rope a asteroid full of minerals, go ahead, do it. You're going to make a fortune.
At least they won't be mining Earth anymore if that's the case.
Well, the thing is that you'll just find that Earth probably at some point, and this is the thing that happens always with economics, at some point it won't be economical to mine Earth anymore.
Yep.
If they get the space elevators up into space and the actual trip into space isn't so costly, then in actual fact, space travel prices will plummet.
Yep.
All you need to do is get up into space, assemble your spacecraft there, and then there's no reason a team of people couldn't go out, rope an asteroid, and bring it back. It'd only take them 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be no different to, going out to somewhere in remote Australia and working there for 18 months as a prospector.
It's like
just be a bit more cramped, and you're more likely to die if you get a hole in the ute.
Yeah, absolutely. The new Wild West, so to speak.
It will be. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt that there'll be, not just the ISS up there. There'll be all sorts of accommodation and crazy wild bars and clubs orbiting the Earth, because that's where you'll hang out. And, of course, you'll have outposts out near Mars because the asteroid belt is just beyond Mars.
Exactly right. And just to bring
You're going to go to Mars, why wouldn't you bring yourself home an asteroid?
That's right. And just to wrap it, the Google story up and to bring it down to a smaller sort of section, you were mentioning before the Google and Telstra sort of pair up. Do you want to describe that too?
Well, in Australia, we're probably all familiar with the NBN, and the idea was to get that to, 93% of Australian homes. For the 7% that are too remote out in the Australian outback, they were going to use satellite stations, bounce, all that sort of stuff. Google Loon project has been around for a while, and they've been touting bringing the internet to areas of Asia and Africa where there currently isn't. But in a very interesting move, Telstra is teaming up with Google Loon. And Google Loon would provide the balloons to hover at 20,000 metres, which is very, very high, much higher than commercial aircraft. And the idea there would be that Telstra would then provide the bandwidth for that project, and they would work together to supply remote Australia and anyone travelling through remote Australia with a Telstra phone, I guess, internet access.
Fantastic. So soon, at some point, there'll be nowhere where you can't get internet access. Is that the?
What a shame.
Well, those days where you thought you could escape, it's not going to happen.
That's right. Don't reckon they won't have cameras up there.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. A lot more to talk about, and I'm sure we'll come back to it at some point in the future. So thanks again for that.
Anytime.
Okay, and don't forget our website, scitechculture.com. It's got all of our links to our content. We're going to be continually adding more and more content, not just these videos and discussions that we have, but much more content over time. You can interact with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. Love to hear from you there, and always good to get into some discussions. We've got photography on Instagram and Flickr, and if you think anyone's interested in these discussions that we have, or just generally in what we've got on our site, just send our website details to them. We'd greatly appreciate that. So that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.